And the uncomfortable truth is that the media isn't forcing this on us, are they? The media is responding to what black people watch. The media gives black people what they have an appetite for. The reason black on black homicide doesn't dominate the news cycle isn't because it doesn't happen. It's because most black people don't watch it. It doesn't fit the story we want to tell ourselves about ourselves, does it? Black on black crime is very inconvenient. You see? See, in that story, black people are victims, but black people are also the perpetrators. You can't easily divide the world into oppressors and oppressed in that regard. You can't point to a white cop or a white vigilante or a racist law or a racist institution and say, there's the problem. That's hard. It's a lot of gymnastics, intellectual gymnastics. The story becomes complicated. It forces us to look inward. It forces us to ask some hard questions about ourselves, about our culture, about violence, about family structure, about community leadership, about accountability and personal responsibility. A lot of people don't want to have that conversation, do you? What we want is a villain. We want somebody else to blame. We want a story where we're clearly the victim and somebody else is clearly the aggressor. We don't always need to be the good guy, but we certainly don't want to ever be the bad guy. See, that's easier. That's cleaner. That's safer. And that's more emotionally satisfying, but it also is not honest. And that's what we are not here, is not honest. Think about what happens when a black person kills another black person. Most people scroll right past it. A black teenager gets shot by another black teenager in the hood, and the local story is gone in 2 days. A black woman gets unalived by her boyfriend or husband, the story disappears before he hits the press. Child gets caught in the crossfire. Nobody knows about it outside the immediate community. Nobody pays attention, but let an offender be white. And suddenly the entire country's enraged. There was a time in the 1980s and the 1990s when people openly talked about drive-by shootings and gang violence and homicide in the black community. Today, most of the conversations have disappeared from the national discussion. They might say Chicago. Chicago has become shorthand for black on black violence. But even then, most people don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear statistics. They don't want to hear names. Shout out to Black Sands. They don't want to hear about victims. They don't want solutions. They don't want accountability. They just change the channel. And that's why this isn't a media problem. It's an audience problem. The media follows attention. The attention follows the appetite. And our appetite is for stories that reinforce what we already believe. Again, if black life truly mattered equally, then the identity of the killer wouldn't determine the level of outrage. If a dead black child matters when a white police officer kills him, then a dead black child should matter when a black gang member kills him too. You see? But that's not how we behave. Too often, black death only becomes nationally valuable when it can be attached to a racial narrative. And when that happens, we're not measuring the value of life. We're measuring the usefulness of the story. That's the point. And if our level of concern changes because or based on the race of the offender, then the issue isn't just black death. The issue is which version of black death fits the narrative we're willing to consume. And that's where we fail. That's where we fail. And that's a problem, in my opinion. My humble opinion. Now, as I said earlier, black people are not allowed to defend ourselves. And that's why the N-word is something that I discuss. Again, it's just a word, right? That's what they say, but they say that because they want to be able to degrade black people without consequences. Black people aren't allowed to defend ourselves even if we're attacked. And when we do, suddenly everybody wants to lecture us about maturity, restraint, and such. That's a double standard. Physical defense, physical self-defense. When white people defend themselves, society understands fear. When non-black groups defend their dignity, society understands their outrage. When black people defend ourselves, society starts looking for reason to call us aggressive. Black person doesn't get to be scared first. A black person has to prove fear after the fact. Because see, again, society acts like black people aren't supposed to defend ourselves because black self-defense forces society to admit that black people are fully human. It forces people to admit we fear, we feel humiliation, we feel anger, we have dignity, and we have boundaries. We have a right to say no. We have a right to protect ourselves. And that's what this caste system does. Now, again, black people, we're allowed to pray. We're allowed to march. We're allowed to forgive. But black people defending themselves, we're not allowed to seek retribution. We're not allowed to seek revenge or monetary reparations, which is why people are so resistant about us getting reparations. At that point, they say we've gone too far. And that brings us back to this Karmelo Anthony case. Did y'all hear this boy got 35 years? 35. 35 years. No criminal record. However you feel about Karmelo Anthony, however you feel about Austin Metcalf, it's a tragedy. A 17-year-old boy lost his life, and another boy is going to prison for 35 years. But we still have to be honest about this case and what it's really forcing us to look at. Karmelo Anthony defended himself. Some of you may believe he went too far. The jury believe he went too far. Some of you believe he used too much force. The jury believed he used too much force. You believe that the outcome was tragic and unnecessary. I would agree. But here's what we need to understand. Karmelo Anthony didn't just randomly walk up on Austin Metcalf and stick a knife in him. He was minding his business. This whole conflict was brought to him and put on his front door, relatively speaking. The child was at it was a rainstorm. He was sitting under a tent at a high school track meet. One boy. He wasn't in there playing the drums. He wasn't blowing the saxophone. He wasn't keeping up a racket. And then another boy tried to make him leave. And that's why all that history that I went through matters. Because the minute a black person says, I was protecting myself, society doesn't hear it the same way. See, when Officer Cortez put Karmelo in handcuffs after the stabbing, Karmelo said, I was protecting myself. He said he put his hands on me. Those weren't some lawyer's words that came out in the courtroom for the first time. Those were the words of a 17-year-old child in an immediate aftermath of a violent encounter. And yet the public conversation still starts from the assumption that Karmelo had no right to feel threatened. That's the point.